So when I got here, I asked Father Ian, I said, by the way, do you have a bio for me? And he said, I just have this one line we took off your website. And that is the most horrifying thing for me because I feel now like I need to introduce myself to you, which requires me to remember exactly what it is I do for work. I'm sure there are a lot of people here who it's like on the spot. It's like, oh God, what have I made? I hosted a morning show called This Is the Day on Catholic TV for 4 years alongside Bishop Robert Reed. I hosted a variety show that showcases young Christian talent called The Renaissance Room. I've written 3 books. The most recent, Courage to Create, was published by Notre Dame. It tells the story of a little abandoned convent in the North End, actually, if you ever get the chance to go. It's owned by St. Leonard's, the Catholic Church. It's the oldest church built by Italian immigrants in the country. And 5 years ago, when I moved to Boston, I met the parish priest there, Father Michael de la Pena, if you ever get the opportunity to meet that wonderful man. And I was performing some of my original spoken word poetry with the confidence that only a 25-year-old can have, right? To get up and be like, you guys are going to love this. Don't worry, we're not doing that today. And afterwards, this wonderful priest came over to me and he said, I loved it. I want to support young Christian artists. What do you need? And I just said the first thing that came to my mind, which is we really need a place to live, because the costs in the city to have artists in these places of great cultural impact where they need to be is so prohibitive. So he said, okay, do you want a convent? You want to live in the convent? And I said, yes, I do. And he gave us domain over this 5-story, abandoned, dilapidated convent in the North End. If you ever get the chance to go, it's just past the 7-Eleven. It's 11 Tileston Street. Wait at the door. Eventually some sort of like haphazard looking 25-year-old will walk by and they'll let you in. It has an in-house chapel, and he said if you can fix it, you can have it. And so we fixed it up by hand. If you ever get the chance to take the tour, that's my handiwork. You can tell it was us doing it. You can tell it was a bunch of kids doing it. And we converted that convent into young Christian artist housing. 5 years later, we've housed just over 100 people, mostly artists, filmmakers, writers, dancers, iconographers, anything you can think of, but also a lot of, something very dear to my heart, emergency medical housing for young families, so that while their children are getting care at some of the best facilities in the world, their whole families can be there. So we've housed as much as families of 7. We've housed NICU moms. It is an amazing building from an amazing, amazing man, Father Michael de la Pena, and that's what that book is about, Courage to Create. It sort of details how we were given the property, some of the personalities that came and lived there, and this sort of Christian bohemia. And it also was the genesis for my latest project that I've spent the last 1.5 years working on. Hopefully it comes to your screens too. It's a show called Converted, and it's all about the church property crisis. We have all of these empty convents, churches, rectories, and we can tear them to the ground. We can let them rot. We can turn them into more overpriced condos, or we can do some good for them as they were intended. And there are a lot of wonderful, wonderful people around the country and around the world who are doing that in their communities. They're turning these properties into domestic violence shelters, homes for adults with disabilities, halfway houses, and so our show is kind of like a home renovation show that highlights those stories. We filmed our pilot over the summer. We're shopping around for distribution right now. It has been the most difficult project of my life. So getting to be here today, just talking about something I love, Miss Gardner, is a balm to my weary soul. So without further ado, I'm gonna get into my talk, but just wanted to let you know who I am. Years ago, after Christmas dinner, my Aunt Susie brought out a box of my grandparents' letters and photographs. One of the letters was from my grandfather to Aunt Susie after the birth of her first child. In it, he assured her that she would be fine, just like her mother had been and her mother's mother before her. The women in this family suffer well, he assured her. Admittedly, as one of the well-suffering women of the clan, what I felt reading his letter to her 30 years later, wasn't quite an assurance. Rather, it was something clicking into place, something that had been rolling around inside of me, a ball without a socket, for years. That moment answered a question that I had felt rise up within me the first time I ever walked into the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. Why does this woman, 150 years, one denomination, and 3 zip codes away resonate with me so deeply. After reading my grandfather's letter, I finally had my answer. What touches me about Isabella is the same thing that touches me about all my other female role models. Like all my other heroines, Joan Didion, Dorothy Day, Dolly Parton, and Mary, the Mother of God herself, Isabella Stewart Gardner was an alchemist of pain. She had the ability to turn her suffering into beauty in a way that is, in my opinion, distinctly feminine and distinctly Christian. Call it the curse of Eve, or call it women's unique embodiment of the crucifixion and resurrection, but women's tears and tears are the only way that new life, and thus new beauty, can enter this world. That truth perfectly encapsulates 3 themes I see in Isabella's spiritual life and creative life: cross, commission, and confession. Isabella's cross, her repeated experiences of tragic loss, were her commission, her co-mission from God to bring beauty into the worlds of ordinary people like you and I. And in the inverse, just as her cross was her commission was her cross, an assignment, a blessed burden that she shouldered with grace. Finally, both her cross and her commission, her exquisite collection, serve as a deeply intimate confession of her soul. There is no receiving her collection, her commission, her cross, without receiving her reconciliation as well. These themes don't just show up in my observations, but in first-hand accounts of Isabella's life and death as well. Much of what we know about Isabella Stewart Gardner's faith comes from the recollections of Father Spence Burton, the first American to be consecrated a bishop in the Church of England, and the keeper of the most intimate account of Isabella's transition from this life to the next. Father Spence describes Mrs. Gardner's health decline and final days of life in the following excerpts from his Mission House diary. April 20th, 1923. Early this morning, a telephone message from Fenway Court to say that Isabella Gardner was failing and wished for her communion at once. Very possibly she may be dying. It is characteristic of her that she insisted on having the priest before the doctor. Isabella would die just a few months later on July 17th, 1924. But just 3 days prior to her health, we have record in the same diaries of her receiving her last confession from a Father Powell. There it is, in first-hand accounts, communion and confession. As for the third C, cross, perhaps I've been using the wrong word. Perhaps I should have been saying crucifix all along. This is a little in the weeds, but for our friends visiting today who are a little bit less familiar with church vernacular, the distinction between cross and crucifix is actually quite striking. A cross is empty. Christ is not on it. It symbolizes resurrection. The crucifix, however, has his body on it, the Corpus Christi still hanging by the nails in his wrists. It symbolizes sacrifice and suffering. When I walk through Fenway Court, I see this collection, her commission, as more of a crucifix than a cross, because I feel her corpus, her suffering in every room. Listen, I am Irish Catholic from New England, so you shouldn't be too surprised when I tell you that my home is filled with crucifixes and not crosses. And when I propose to you today that suffering, whether it be Isabella's or my own, is good, is necessary, and is a gift. I know this to be true in my life, and I wholeheartedly believe it to be true in Isabella's as well. In a modern cultural landscape that offers emotional, social, and spiritual epidurals at every turn, Isabella Stewart Gardner is an example of someone who had no choice but to experience the many great losses of life unmedicated. And in her acute experiences of pain, her time hanging by her wrists on the cross that Christ chose for her, she transfigured and resurrected her pain into beauty that lives on long after she did. There's no point in trying to prove a negative. I can't prove to you that if Isabella hadn't lost her only son in 1865, when he was just 2 years old, that her museum wouldn't have still come to be. I can't claim to know for sure that her subsequent miscarriage and the loss of her beloved husband Jack in 1893 are directly related to the fact that I'm standing here today, still discussing her legacy almost 200 years after her birth. But I can tell you that her doctors prescribed travel to Europe to help her heal from those losses, and that those travels became the art acquisition trips that filled Fenway Court with the beauty that it now holds today. And I can tell you that it is so like a woman and so like a mother to heal others on her journey to heal herself. No, but instead of trying to prove a negative, I will offer you a confession of my own and admit to you the way that suffering and tragic loss have radically transformed my own heart, creative work, and entire life trajectory. And I'll invite you, especially the women in the room, to admit the same. Friends, as you may have noticed, the world is suffering right now in a way that feels particularly acute. You cannot unlock your phone, turn on your TV, or step out your door without being reminded how terribly men handle power and what they perceive as pleasure. To add insult to injury, our mediascape seems addicted to glorifying those stories in the name of entertainment. And we seem addicted to consuming it. Now is probably the right time for me to show my cards a little, and this is why I gave a little biography of myself at the beginning, and admit my ulterior motive in all of this. I have built my entire life around a singular mission: to share truth and goodness through the vehicle of beauty. Beauty softens hearts and opens ears to truths that can otherwise be too painful to accept. Truths like suffering is good. Suffering is necessary. Suffering is a gift. For this next part, I thought we were going to be in the church, so I need you to imagine that we're in the church, okay? Ready? Take a moment. Look around you. You are encapsulated in a physical manifestation of this phenomenon as we speak. The beauty of this space, the church, eases you into the reality of what it is. An altar. Here we reenact the most terrible, terrific sacrifice in human history. And from that blood and torn flesh burst forth new life for us all. If this place is an altar, well then, like Mrs. Jack's Fenway Court, it must also be a womb. I say all of this to convince you that now is the time to tell the story of Isabella's alchemy in narrative form. Her value on our screens and stages would be akin to the value of saints in our church. In understanding her story and suffering, and accepting that procreative nature of this woman's pain, we can be fortified to accept and even celebrate our own. Our own confessions, our own crosses, and our own commissions. Thank you and God bless. I'll take any questions you have as long as they're not hard. I'm not the scholar here, they're coming, okay? Are there any questions? Only hard ones, huh? Oh, of course. Thank you for having me here. I mean, being in some sort of space and situation like this has been, and there are moments where I was like, don't cry, Claire, don't cry. This has been a dream of mine for years. I do mean it when I say that Isabella's life has just touched my own and her legacy. And, you know, by the time it made it to you, all of these are like, and suffering's good, right? But when I was experiencing, and one of my dear friends, Caroline, is here, she knows I have had a very hard year. And I don't know how I would have navigated that kind of pain without being able to draw inspiration and strength really truly from the well-suffering woman before me. And the first time I read that letter from my grandfather, I was horrified, right? Because I'm not trying to promote female suffering. We deserve joy and pleasure and comfort just like everyone else. But, you know, with time, I've had to admit, like, all jokes aside, like, why do I love Dolly Parton so much? Why do I love Joan Didion so much, Dorothy Day, Edna Vincent Millay? Why do these women really resonate with me so deeply? And there's no opting out of pain even if I wanted to. so how can I learn to navigate it in a way that my heroines did? And yeah, I think Isabella, for me personally, is the most incredible example we have here in this city. So, yeah. Yes?
Do you happen to know of any artistic depictions of suffering that particularly resonated with Mrs. Gardner? And so can you tell us about them or comment on them?
Diana definitely can. I did look at one yesterday, but I don't remember what it is. But there are, I mean, Diana, you can speak to this, but there's a number of depictions of Mary with the Christ child.
I mean, there's a lot. So, we'll get there. Yeah. We'll get there. Yeah.
Yes, Mrs. Meditz, hi.
Claire, is there a particular painting or object in the museum that the Gardner Museum that you feel especially drawn to, that moves you in some way you might describe to us?
That's a great question. This is a little weird. The answer is nothing particular to this speech. It really, for me, would be like the atrium, the courtyard. And while I was writing this, and this is just me and my overactive imagination, but I really kept imagining that space as her cross and as the space of crucifixion and resurrection, because what I love so much that you guys do is you have these sort of cyclical, what would the word be? Like you're changing the agriculture.
Oh, yeah, the courtyard garden.
The courtyard garden,
That's
yeah, it's cyclical, and you just see the change in the resurrection, and that really, every single time, I'm so excited to see the beautiful way that you all mix newness with tradition and holding on to what she wanted us to be as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
You had a wonderful sentence, which I'm wondering if you can repeat because I felt
Maybe.
it so strongly. It was something like, in her healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got that. Let me pull it up for you.
While she was going through her own healing,
Mm-hmm.
she manages to put something together
Yeah.
which gives healing
Mhm.
to others. I mean, it just struck me, and I couldn't write it down fast.
You're very
But
sweet.
it was a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I appreciate
I'm
that.
very involved with the Gardner, and it's one of these things that really resonates with me.
Yeah, I can tell you that it's so like a woman, so like a mother, to heal others on her journey to heal herself. Would that be it?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. I can send this to you afterwards. It's on a Google Doc. It doesn't quite read like an article because there's a lot of ellipses, so I know when to take dramatic pauses. So you can read it aloud to yourself.
Thank you.
Of course, thank you. Anything else? Yes?
I was just wondering if there are, to your knowledge, or maybe to the knowledge of our other speakers, are there accounts of Isabella's having experienced healing? I think everything you're saying is very persuasive, and my sense of her overall is that she, she's sort of like Queen Elizabeth. She didn't want to make people privy to her soul. She didn't expose the deepest dramas of her spiritual life very often. So I was just wondering, as you think about her having experienced healing, invited others into it, have you come across accounts that articulate her experiencing that?
Well, our biographers can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of her personal accounts she destroyed, right? She burned a lot of her own personal writings, and then she kept the letters between herself and other people more often than not. For me personally, and this is going to be a lot of me projecting, but as a person of faith, to persevere in faith the way she did her whole life and continue to practice and continue to be seeking confession and communion in her final months and days is a sign of healing. And anyone here who has experienced like the sacrament of reconciliation, I would say that is a pretty big indicator of healing, because for us what it means is we lay out all of our stuff, and you leave with absolution. That's the belief in there too. So I would say that that's really indicative of her experiencing healing, especially the fact that she was continuing to go back, not even just after losing her son and her husband, but also the terrible pain that she was in her final days, that she was still seeking that absolution and healing through that. Okay. Yeah?
This has been simply wonderful. I'm curious, when you're at the Gardner, or Fenway Court, I guess, and in the cloisters area there, and you're experiencing her spiritually, if you could actually meet her in Cafe G, what would you like to ask her, or what would you like to?
Such a great
chat
question.
or-
Yeah. I would really, honestly, I would want to know about her experience with pain, because the thing is, like, again, as someone who, as I said, had a very hard year, and as I turned 32 June 9th. You guys can all email me happy birthday, send any gifts you want to 8 Federal Street. And life is getting very real very quickly for myself and my friends, right? This is when things really start to happen. People start losing things that they're never going to get back. And I don't have enough life experience to know what it is to live with those losses long term yet. I don't know. And honest to God, and I mean this so sincerely, I don't know if hearts stay broken forever. I don't know if those feelings, like, I'm sure they become less intense with time, but I just don't have enough life experience to know. And I look at the life she lived, that I really do so admire, and I really do believe that, I like to believe that she found healing by bringing beauty and healing to other people, but I would want to know what it's like to live with that for your whole life and to persevere, because right now I feel pretty good about myself, right? I'm like, well, you know what, I'm persevering and I'm continuing to create and make beautiful things out of pain, but I'm in like year 1 of pain, right? And there's going to be so many more beautiful things, but I would just want lived wisdom, and that's why I, especially in this tricky year that I've had, the most amazing thing, that's why it's such a woman-focused speech, the thing that has given me strength is even just meeting women in my day-to-day life who have lived 2 or 3 times as long as I have, and I see that life goes on. And I hear about their life stories, and here I am pitying myself, and the things that they've survived over the course of a lifetime are much larger than anything else I've experienced. And they seem happy, and they're wearing very cool outfits, and they got married again. So, and I think, okay, if you can persevere, and if life goes on, and you're laughing with your girlfriends in the coffee shop next to me, then I can be doing that, knowing that the pain I have right now, I'll probably have some version of it forever, and there's more coming. I would want to, hear about her perseverance and what it is like to live long-term with the pains and the joys. Yeah. Thank you, Father.
Thank you.